We made it.
We made it.
Ooh, 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 ooh.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Easy Speak Speakeasy podcast.
We're so happy that you are here with us.
So exciting.
Yes.
The Easy Speak Speakeasy podcast, you've unlocked the door into unfiltered mental health and wellness conversations.
We're going to talk about it all.
All of it.
Unfiltered.
Unfiltered.
The real.
The real. All of the things.
No stigma.
No stigma and no topics left behind. And we're so excited to be able to share our thoughts and our innovations and to hear from other people in the community who are doing amazing work as it relates to mental health and wellness. Mm-hmm. And this podcast is something that we've been thinking of for years at this point.
Yeah.
At least 4 or 5 years. And so we're really excited that it's happening. And so as a result of our excitement, and something that's also going to be a staple in every podcast episode, we are going to have a toast and a drink.
Yes.
And so since it's our inaugural podcast and our first one, we're going to
Pop a bottle.
Pop some bubbly, because it's only right.
And try to do this without anyone losing an eye.
Please and thank you. Safety first.
And perhaps we'll introduce ourselves.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yay! That's like one of the best sounds.
I know, it really is.
It just equals like fun.
I love it.
Okay, so.
In case you were wondering what our personalities are like, these napkins, I will read to you, say, fuckity, fuck. So.
And that's typically
You're
how
welcome.
we feel about the mental health services in the world.
Yes.
So they
Thank you.
really speak to what this podcast series is going to be about.
Yes.
So first, let's do a little cheers.
Let's do a little cheers.
A cheers to us and a cheers to all of those who will join us along the way in this podcast.
Yay. Cheers.
Cheers. Little sip. Yum.
Yum.
Also, a good sparkling water is good for those that are having a dry January.
Oh, that's right.
A lot of people doing dry January.
A lot of people are doing that. I am not, clearly. The only thing that's dry is my martini in January. Okay.
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 Slimy with that. So I'll introduce myself first.
Okay.
I am Christy Glenn, the Chief Experience Officer, founding partner, all things lived experience for our organization, Pinnacle Partnerships. We will talk a little bit about Pinnacle Partnerships, but I think the thing that's most important to know about me is that I came to the world of mental health in such a capacity where I'm actually doing a podcast about it, because I have a child with mental health needs that started at a very young age, and along the way realized how many families, this is incense blowing by my face, by the way, for those who are watching us. For those who are listening, there's just like gorgeous smoke blowing, wisping by.
Sage and Santo. Very good.
So my child had mental health needs, or has mental health needs, and I met so many families along the way who were learning what to do, where to go, what to say on their own, as I was. And it has really never ended. Over the 15 years that I have been trying to make space for family voice in this work, it has been a consistent problem. And so I left my career then in finance and hopped into, we're about to stop this problem in mental health for families. Like, why is it so hard to get services?
Yeah.
So that is who I am, and the sort of passion that I bring to this podcast and to the work that we do in the world is from the lens of a family. I'm always thinking about family voice, family representation, and youth voice and youth representation in the mental health space.
I am Diana. I am the other founding partner here at Pinnacle Partnerships. I'm also our Chief Experience Officer. I come to this
You're
work.
not our Chief Experience
Sorry,
Officer.
our Chief.
That's my job. Stop trying to steal it. What?
Our Chief
Literally?
Clinical Officer.
Thank you.
I was just thinking.
Get your own job.
So much about you that it was overwhelming my energetic fields, and so I apologize. I'm our Chief Clinical Officer, and I come to this work from a clinical perspective, as you know. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and prior to that was a child and family therapist, still am. Child and family therapist, did that work for many, many years. And, I think it was very early on for me into my career as a clinician that I just recognized the immense gaps that existed in children's mental health, and how there were what seemed to me to be very obvious solutions to bridging some of those gaps that just didn't have the necessary infrastructure to kind of support, and not a lot of people had a lot of stake in the game as it related to bridging those gaps. When we met each other at the Harvard Innovation Lab those many years ago, we were the only two in the room who were really focused on children's mental health, family mental health, and everyone else was really just so focused on technology and making money and really capitalizing on the healthcare business and the healthcare industry. And so because the children's mental health space has been kind of one of those spaces that is still burgeoning in the mental health field, mental health really didn't start gaining a lot of traction as a medical practice until I think the 30s in this country. And so it's still catching up to everything else the mental health space in general is, but then when you think about it from the perspective of children and families, there's still so much work and still so much infrastructure that needs to be built, to be able to really support children and families in a way that changes their lives and takes them on a journey with a destination of health and well-being. And so I remember myself being a young clinician just thinking, one, there's so many opportunities to be creative and to think about what really makes a difference in an individual's life, in a family's life, in a child's life, and from a community perspective. And so that was super exciting to me, which is why I landed in a place like the Harvard Innovation Lab to begin with, because I just saw the open field. And also, it's just one of those areas of mental health, children and families, that is also one of the more difficult, I think, for a lot of people who are looking to do this work, because there's so many different areas to address, right? When we're talking about adult mental health, we're talking about the individual, right? And still, as a nurse, I like to look at people from a holistic perspective. But when we're talking about children, we're not just talking about that individual child, we're also talking about their family, the community that surrounds them, the adults, the things that are influencing them right now, their friends, their school,
yeah,
right? And so
their stage of development,
yeah,
so many constantly changing factors.
Yeah, there's so many factors. And so I think that's why, you and I both really recognized in one another that we understood that was all the things that we were working with. We weren't trying to just focus on a small portion of the pie. We really are looking both were looking and are still looking to influence things on a more holistic perspective. And I think that that's really amazing. And so here at Pinnacle, we are really just, I love our dedication and focus to helping children, families, and the organizations that are part of their lives to be able to achieve optimal health and wellness from a mental health standpoint. And, you know, we of course know that that spans across all of the different domains of life. So
Yeah. One of the reasons why we have always wanted to start a podcast is because in working in the field, whether we're directly working with youth and families or we're supporting organizations, it's limited, you know, and so there are so many larger conversations that are happening in the world that we always want to address in different ways. And even when we're working directly with organizations or schools or directly with families, there are these topics that continuously pop up that really people don't talk about, or there aren't a lot of platforms to have like honest conversations about them.
that's true.
And, you know, as a parent, I always talk about this like hidden network of closed Facebook rooms, right? Where like there are all of these parents that are talking about different things that are happening in their lives or sharing information. But when you're new to this whole new world of having a child with mental health, or your child has been doing okay for a while and suddenly they come into adolescence and there's a shift and you don't know where to go, you don't know how to really find those closed groups, you know? And so I think it's important to have conversations that are out and open in the air for people, and for us to like have guests on that challenge the system and that talk about things that people don't usually talk about, and talk about all of these, you know, taboo subjects that have been, you know, floating around forever about mental health. And I think that's what we're really going to do here, and what we think about, and like even down to like the name of this podcast is about like being able to speak easily about like what this really is, right? But also that we realize there's a speakeasy like element to it. It still feels like there's like some shroudedness to like this element of mental health. And you know, we really want to break down like those barriers and help everyone that comes to this podcast to find a network of other people that are experiencing what they're experiencing, regardless of kind of where you sit in the world. Because I think one thing that has happened in like the past few years is the iceberg around mental health is starting to melt a little bit, which is wonderful. And so I feel like this is like a prime time for us to start our podcast, because people are starting to talk about it. Celebrities are starting to talk about it. Obviously, we're now hearing more reports and things in the news about suicide of celebrities and other well-known people, where you would never know that that was the cause of death before. You would just, something tragic happened, you know, you would never hear that it was suicide. And so these are important things that are happening around us that we need to talk through. I think especially when we're thinking about kids, that when you hear that your favorite athlete or podcaster, Mark had shared with me, Mark's our production, everything behind the camera, was sharing that one of his favorite podcasters died by suicide. And so, you know, like as a youth or an individual, you know, what that may do to somebody who struggles with their own mental health, or maybe having their own thoughts around that sort of stuff. And those are the conversations that don't happen after
Right.
like those headlines hit the news.
Right.
It's like, then what?
Right.
You know, and so I feel like this is where we're gonna have these conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And have some fun along the way.
And have some fun, right.
Like, I think that's
Right.
a key thing about who we are.
Yes, about who we are, and I think
Clearly, by our cocktail napkins.
clearly. And also I think
Cheers to our cocktail napkins.
cheers!
And my thrifted glasses.
Mm.
Okay.
These are great. I was telling Christy today that I love to drink out of martini glasses because they're so wide, and she was like, "Oh, well, I have martini champagne glasses." Like, okay, great, it's perfect. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I
Like,
think
we're not drinking champagne out of a martini glass today, okay?
I was really planning on doing that. And I was fine with it.
I wasn't. That wasn't happening. That was a hell no.
It's fine. Yeah, I think one of the things about mental health that we've always fought against is the heavy stigma, because we know that stigma really helps to perpetuate a lot of the mental health challenges that we're seeing in our communities. And the fact that we're able to kind of use our platform to be able to kind of break through that stigma in a new way is so exciting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think even like the title of our episode today like speaks to like our vibe. You know, like we're planning like, okay, so our first episode, like let's tell people who we are and like why do you guys even want to listen to us?
Yeah.
And immediately I hear like the Peloton guy being like, bitch, why you come?
What? Cody Rigsby, I think that's his name. I hope I didn't botch that, but like, he's hilarious.
Bitch, why you come?
Why'd you come?
I'm like, we gotta tell people why they're coming here to
Yeah.
listen to us. Like,
That's
it's the
right.
perfect name for our first episode.
So the goal of today was for each of us to come up with some questions for one another.
I forgot that assignment. I'm gonna just fly off the
Me too.
whatever.
Watch this.
Watch this. Watch this.
I have one question that I wrote down while you were talking. So I guess I'll go first.
Oh no.
with the questions.
Oh no.
So just so you guys get
Oh,
a
no.
chance to get to know us a little
no,
bit.
No.
We're gonna ask each other. Okay, so Christy and I met each other back in like 2017, 18,
Yeah. No, 17.
17,
16? 17?
17.
I don't know. What year was the little one born? That's how we know. We do everything by that infant carrier.
2017. Yes, when we met, I had an infant and a 2-year-old. They're both now 7 and 5.
Every
So-
time, like, it's his birthday, we're like, oh,
I know, pinnacle anniversary.
it's our anniversary.
It's not bad enough that his birthday is on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
He also has the pinnacle anniversary.
He has
to
us
contend
being
with.
like, it's our anniversary. Anniversary.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, so 2017. And since then, I've heard you tell your story so many times, you know, with
You're welcome.
your son. And every time, I'm so touched, like, emotionally, like, I can just, your journey is, like, palpable to me on a different level. And one of the questions that I had was there, like, a particular moment or, like, event or thing that happened that had you be like, okay, my entire life and energy is going to be shifted in this direction? Because you talk about, you know, you kind of just like nonchalantly, you're like, I just left my like job in finance and like now all of a sudden like I'm a mental health warrior and advocate. And I'm like, there has to be some sort of something in between there. So like, was there like a thing that happened or like a particular moment that like made that shift happen for you? But like, besides being an amazing mom, like what was the thing that like
I mean,
made the shift for you?
I don't think there was like a definitive, like, this is the absolute moment. It was definitely a lead up, but it was honestly like I went to work every single day waiting for my boss to come over to tell me that the daycare was on the phone.
Oh.
And then I would have to leave and go and deal with that. And so by the time he was like 3.5, he had been disenrolled, which is my nice way of saying kicked out,
Yeah.
of 8 daycares.
It's wild.
So like imagine how many phone calls
Yeah, before
like
leading up to that.
at work,
Oh
you
my
know,
God.
like my boss could be walking by me to go to the ladies' room, and I was like, like it was just like so traumatizing, you know, to be doing that. And I was blessed enough that my grandmother had an apartment building, and she had an open apartment, and she was like, I was living in a different town at the time, and she was like, move back home into this apartment building and like take care of your family.
Yeah.
You know?
Aw.
And so that was really like maybe that conversation was the moment that I was like, okay, like
Yeah.
I can actually like focus on this for right now and like spend the time, because
Yeah.
it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like the phone calls, this, the that, like you're trying to advocate, you're trying to put your mind and your efforts and your energy around it, and still go to work and still do drop off, still do pickup, still make dinner. It's bath time, read stories. He was all over the place. I have an older child, you know, that wasn't that old, you know, and it was just wild.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but like, you know, what I was doing was kind of like, as I was learning and meeting families, instead of working, I started like volunteering
Oh.
in all of the like places, as like we advocated and we went to different hospitalizations and these sorts of things. I would see these areas of like different like parent support groups, or like meet different families, and I would see places where like they're trying to get a parent council going and literally nobody is signing up for it, or you know, these kinds of opportunities. And so I would volunteer for all of those things. And so that became like essentially like my work, but it also helped me to learn so much about the mental health system, and it made me have great relationships with his school,
Oh, that's
wherever
good.
it was that he was going at the time.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I always say that I was very blessed to be able to have that, because if I didn't, you know, I probably just would have been in the situation where I held on to every job for as long as I possibly could until I got fired,
Yeah.
and then get another job and held on to it for as long as I possibly could, like most
Right.
families that have very acute kids do. It's
Yeah.
either that or you live on government assistance, which is totally fine when you are trying to take care of
Yeah.
a child that has disabilities, or you're trying to figure out what's happening with your kid. So yeah, I think that was probably the moment. It was when like my grandmother gave me that like little bit of an opening to say
Yeah.
like, come back
Yeah.
closer to family,
Yeah.
and like let us help you, and you don't have to worry about like paying rent,
Yeah.
and like just take care of your bills and your
Yes.
food and whatever,
Yeah.
and like let's
Focus.
figure out what's happening with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's it. That's why I left my career in finance
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
and went to an empty bank account.
An empty bank account.
But an entirely different and awesome life.
Yeah.
Really. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it. Look where I am.
Slay the
At the
day.
Speakeasy,
The Easy Speak Speakeasy slaying the day.
you know? Do you having these conversations? Mark's at the camera. Michelle's in the booth.
Michelle's in the booth.
I'm down with this life.
Me too.
And I can build this life around my kid's need, right? Like his mental health is not gone.
Yeah.
you know, he's older and we have more services and we've learned the system and all of these things.
Yep.
But, you know, we have our days.
Yeah. Like we
Sometimes
all
I'm
do.
like, guess what, guys? I gotta go. Like,
I gotta go. Don't call me.
I'll have my people call your people.
OMG. I know. That's just, yeah.
Okay, so my question for you.
Okay.
All right, let me think of one.
Oh, boy.
All right, here it is.
Okay. Oh, she had it ready. Oh, let me think of one. 2 seconds later, here it is.
Literally, you know me. I'd be coming up with stuff. Okay, so.
Okay.
So, you know, we've like really gotten to know each other's families
Yep.
over this time.
Yep.
And so you come from a Haitian family
Yep.
who have jobs that are sort of like in fields that are very specific.
Yep.
And they really, as part of, I think, some of your own family's culture, but definitely like the Haitian culture, mental health has a like shit ton of stigma around it, right?
For sure.
And like tons of beliefs, culturally, religiously, like all of those things. So when you decided that you wanted to become a therapist, did you face like any challenges in that? And like, how did you even like get on the path to that, like being raised in like the Haitian culture?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question.
I know.
Literally. Have some more Prosecco.
My next one will be even better.
Even better. It just keeps getting better and better and better, and it's so good. Yeah, so, you know, I guess I'll just backtrack way back to when I was getting ready to go to undergrad. So I went to Boston College undergrad, and my plan was to go there, be pre-med, and become a doctor. And I remember getting there, and they said to me that like pre-med wasn't a major, even though it was like probably the more difficult and arduous task that you could take on as an 18-year-old to get ready to become a physician. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, you need to pick a major. And I remember just being like, well, I've always been so fascinated by like human behavior, how people become the way that they are, you know, and just like also a little selfishly to my own advantage, like it'd be really good to figure out like if there's like a pattern of behavior that can be attributed to certain people, and then I could just like navigate the world and just like slay the day. And so
you were like, because some people are on my nerve.
Some people are on my nerve, and I need to figure out what to say and do to like get them away. So I became a psychology major, which I fell in love immediately, just learning about the human brain and the body and the way that our environment affects us and the way that biology affects us. And I remember saying to my mom, it was like first semester, they had me taking like 18 credits, and I was just struggling because I came from like a small Catholic school where I was like in the top 1%, and then I went to a huge Jesuit school where everyone who's there is in the top 1%, right? And so we're all competing against one another to get into medical school, and it was like a very dog-eat-dog world. But the saving grace for me, I think, was the fact that I couldn't have pre-med be my major. I had to pick something else. And so when I picked psychology and I started taking some psych classes, I remember just feeling like, oh my gosh, like this is the perfect combination of where I can let my creativity run free, but then also have that like strong foundation of science, right? Because like I said before, mental health and psychology is such like a relatively new space in the medical field. And so I remember saying to my parents that like, you know, I had always maintained that the thing that I wanted to do when I grew grow up was that I wanted to help people. And the easiest thing that I could think of. And so, I think for me, the mental health field presented a lot of opportunities, like I said, to help people, but then also to make my own unique mark on the world. And so, at the end of the day, like, I think, my family is very proud and they're very happy to see all of the different things I've accomplished. I've had to do the kind of like, watch this, and just like take the leap of faith knowing that it's going to pay off while everyone else is on the sideline a little scared and nervous, but like cheering me on. So yeah. Did I answer your question? I can't remember what the original like whole question was.
Yeah, you answered it.
Okay, cool. We're doing so good. This is great.
We're killing it.
We're killing it. Ooh, we be killing them. We be killing them. Ooh, we be killing them. We be killing them.
Do you have another question? Or are we done with the question and answer segment?
We can be done.
Okay. Moving on. I'm over that.
Yes, this is why the listeners have come.
Mitch, why you come? To listen to us disagree.
No, but I think that's one of the things that I love so much about our relationship and our business is that we bring such different perspectives, and it just leads ultimately to growth and innovation and like something that neither of us, I think, ever have like a full vision of what it's going to be until it is.
Yeah.
And we talk about that a lot with like the power of like a lived experience professional and a clinical person coming together and like the impact that can make because we both value and understand each other's perspectives and like the way that we're looking at the world based on our own experiences, right? And I think that's one of the things in the mental health space that has been really challenging is that we've relied so heavily on like the professionals or like the people who have like gone through a certain like regimented program, and there's a place for that, right? But that's not the end all be all of mental health, right? Like the quote that I love is, and I've been using a lot in the last like year and a half, is that like mental health is a medical problem with social solutions, right? So, we need that like medical aspect, that like clinical aspect, but then like the rest really is up to the family, the community, the organizations, society as a whole to be able to gather the tools and resources they need in order to promote a healthy living state. We can't just say like, go to therapy for a week and then you're cured, right? Like life happens outside of that 1 hour of therapy that you have a week, right? So that clinician, while they can help provide some focused insight and information, is not the end all be all.
From a parent perspective, and what I have seen happen time and again is professionals, I'm just wrapping all kinds of professionals, oftentimes, really rely on their expertise and the expertise of other professionals. But that is a sliver in time, of a family's life.
Yeah.
And without really addressing what is happening with the whole family or involving the parent or caregiver in the conversations, in the treatment, like really finding a way to engage families at school, in therapeutic services, in all of the community, all of the different things that are happening.
Yeah.
That therapeutic treatment is only going to go so far.
Yep.
Right?
That's true.
And it's like one thing that I see happen to families all the time is they'll consistently take their kids to therapy or, whatever the thing of the moment is that their kid is, being assigned to, whether it be school or a therapeutic service, and they're not as involved in it as they should be.
Yeah.
And then when something doesn't go right, the parent is the first one to blame.
Yeah.
Right? And
true.
it's like, that is so wrong on so many levels. Like, first thing is, parental guilt is a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Even all parents that are raising kids that are typically developing, all have guilt,
Yeah.
right? Like, I work too much, I missed this, I didn't see that, like, you want to be all things to your kid
Yeah.
all the time. And everybody, I believe that all parents strive to be the best parent that they can with the resources that they have. And that looks different for everyone. Some families have a ton of resources, and that helps them to look like they're the best parents, right? And other families don't have a lot of resources, and it's harder to look like the best parent, right? But that love, that instinctual, feeling to want to provide for and support and give your kid everything is there in almost everybody. There's a small percentage of people
Of course.
in the world, right, for any group.
Yeah.
But by and large, most families and parents want to do well for their kids.
Yeah.
And when something like a mental health diagnosis or a mental health diagnosis that has a lot of behaviors or sexualized behaviors, fire-setting behaviors, these like really difficult to deal with behavioral implications, these are the parents that I see get blamed the most,
Yeah.
right? And oftentimes there is something that may have happened along the way where the parent was doing something to try to care for their kid, right? Like, they're working 3 jobs because they're a single parent.
Yeah.
And they left their child with a trusted person.
Yeah.
And that child was sexually assaulted. And therefore there's trauma that comes out in this whatever way.
School setting or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the parent is blamed for that,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, I feel like the system has such a hard time of taking a step back and saying, like, hold on, like, we know that
Yeah.
almost everybody who goes through some sort of a sexual exploitation is by somebody that they know. It's by a family member. It's by a close person in the family's life. And so to immediately rush to judgment and blame the family and pull the kid out of the house and, do all of these things that just continuously add trauma,
Yeah.
that are all decisions that are just made in a vacuum by professionals, and the family is left like, now they're labeled the bad parent that
Yeah.
doesn't listen to anyone, that, is so defensive. And it's like, well, yeah, I'm defensive. You just came in here and took my kid
Yeah.
that went through something that I didn't even know about when I was out trying to work to give them everything that I can, and you're not even giving me a second.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, for me, in my role in the world as somebody with lived experience, I feel like it's so important that I continuously push for parent voice to be at the highest levels of places.
Yeah.
Like, parent voice should be represented on every board of every organization that's serving youth. Parent voice should be included in every school on the decision-making level, not in just a
Give
parent,
feedback level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, let us know
Yeah.
after we made the decisions what you think about it.
Yeah.
No,
Which happens so often.
I don't care now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
looks great. Bye.
Yeah.
I have my email box is on 7,000.
Yeah,
Like, you
yeah.
know what I mean? You already decided this without me. Right? So, like, continuously talking about how do we raise parents to be up there.
Yeah.
Okay. You'll hear me in this podcast talk about perceived power a lot. So how do we have parents be up there
Yeah.
in places of perceived power, right? But with decision makers,
Yeah.
in influencing rooms, and that's something that I always talk about is even if a parent, people always, once I get people to say, okay, we're going to have a parent join the board, the very next sentence is, do they know how to be on a board? I'm like,
yeah, or like
I don't know. Do they know how to sit in a chair? Like, come on.
yeah, or like
Like-
when we're like, we want to do a hybrid youth mental health first aid course for parents, and they're just like, we can't do that because then they can't log on to the internet, and we're like,
I'm like, oh, you don't think they have Facebook?
that doesn't sound like a strength-based
Right.
approach.
It's like it automatically goes to like this deficit based. And right, like, does every parent know, like, quote unquote, how to be on a board?
No,
No,
I
but
don't.
guess
I still
what?
don't. We have a nonprofit. I'm like, what do I have to do?
It's like, right, not everybody has served on a board of directors.
Do I have to raise my hand now or no? Oh no.
Right, like
not- it's
everybody
not my
is going to
turn.
have their first experience being on a board of directors,
Yeah.
whether you're an executive
Yeah.
and you do that or whether you're a family. So, like, that approach is just so ridiculous, It's like you just have to approach families with the same level of love and respect and care and, like, value,
Yeah.
like you and I do, right? It's like we see each other as 100% equals, right? And I think that's what makes our relationship work and like the work that we do in the world really work is that
Yeah.
I know your strengths, you know my strengths, and we know where we fill in each other's gaps.
Right.
And like that, I think, is like what we're doing in all the things that we're doing is
Yeah.
trying to like elevate that message to everyone. Like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like when you boil it down, it's such a like
So
the
rudimentary.
things you learned in kindergarten.
Yeah,
There's like
basic.
this book that like
The golden rule, ladies and gentlemen. Treat others how you would like to be treated. And you'll see the benefits.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's so true.
But it's, when it comes into the mental health space, it becomes something totally different.
Yeah.
And, we're going to change that. So stay tuned, worlds.
The other thing we will be talking about in this podcast is manifesting and speaking light and words into the life that you want to live and embody. And the things that we say have a huge impact on everything around us, which makes a huge difference. As we're building Pinnacle, we are very conscientious about the things that we say about everything, the things that we do, the words that we attribute to the work that we're doing, because as human beings, we communicate on a certain level and a certain energetic field, and without, us being really intentional about that, it can really muddy the waters.
I think some other things that people can expect, at least what we're thinking about right now. This will shift and change over time because we have big visions.
Big one.
Another one.
Eaters.
We're just like spiraling off in all directions
The
now.
TikTok
From
peeps
the-
get me.
the chief experience officer over there is
Eaters.
spiraling off in all directions.
Big one.
Okay.
This is so nice to have a podcast that is our own.
100%.
Because we could just be ourselves. It's fine.
Do you want more of this?
Yep. Should I? Questionable.
That's why we always call Uber.
That's right.
Safety first.
Safety first.
Other things people can expect from Easy Speak
Yeah.
is we'll talk about mental health in the news for sure.
Mental health in the news.
Things that are like currently like trending, but also things that maybe not a lot of people know that are happening out there in the world. So we're definitely going to talk about that. We are going to infuse some mindfulness techniques. We'll be talking a lot about self-care and all the different ways that you can infuse self-care into your life. Because a lot of times we just hear the same old take a walk, read a book,
listen to music,
which are all valid things, but there's so many more. So we want to continuously promote different ways of self-care for different walks of life and different people. And we'll also
have some guests on. Local people, also other influential folks that we'll be working on getting on here in the mental health space.
Lady Gaga,
we're looking at you. Okay, Lady Gaga. And Paris Hilton. Okay. And Kanye West. Okay.
Kanye.
And, I'm really excited for that piece because I think, as many angles and perspectives as we can include in the mental health conversation, the more it's going to help to break down that stigma and to normalize us just having conversations about what it's like to be a human being in 2023, and not just a human being, but a healthy one, someone who's striving for optimal health for themselves and their families.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Super exciting.
And we will be, I think, closing most of our podcasts with a meditation moment.
A meditation moment.
Just because, sometimes we just don't take that 1 minute a day to regulate our breathing, and we're going to be talking about lots of different things. I just came up out of nowhere and talked about a whole bunch of heavy stuff in the middle of
You were like sexual assault, and I was like, oh, we're going to need a meditation today. Actually.
Because, when you just have conversations and you're just going with the flow, these are the things that come up.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what Easy Speak is about, is there's nothing taboo, there's nothing off limits here, right? So we're going to talk about these things that are often hard, that people pause on. Should I say this or not? No, yeah, you should say it, right? Because the more we say it, the more we talk about it, the less stigma there is.
You have officially experienced episode 1 of the Easy Speak Speakeasy. You're welcome.